about Ecclesiastes 1:4. A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. Will it? Because 2 Peter 3:10 says that the earth will be burned up.
All right. Will the fire in 2 Peter destroy the earth? In 2 Peter chapter, or the second epistle of Peter, chapter 3, the fire that is spoken of is not intended to completely destroy the earth, but rather to purify it. Okay. This is a constant theme throughout Scripture. So if you're not familiar with Scripture, then you're going to miss this important concept. Paradise lost will become paradise restored. Not paradise lost will become the earth being destroyed, but the idea is that God is going to restore all things to new. So the entire cosmos, Paul talks about this in his writings, that the earth, he personifies the earth, and he says that it is moaning and it's groaning and waiting for its liberation from decay. So entropy will be no more. Okay, everything will be restored to new, and it won't have a life cycle like everything does today, okay, or an expiration date. That's basically a constant theme throughout Scripture. Skeptic philosophy is in the chat, and he's going to come in because he believes he has found something wrong with one of Jesus's prophecies. So we're going to take a look at.
I hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, that's much better. Yeah, we hear you now. So what's the passage you want to look at? You argue that Jesus is a false prophet?
Because... No, hold on. You're getting ahead of yourself. Give me one moment and let me get some push to talk set up here. One moment.
Okay. I made a claim that Jesus said, and the early church thought it so. Okay. Fact of the matter, how's it going? Is this Hillary? Is this Hillary's email? Did you change your name to Fact of the Matter? Oh, come on. Well, Hillary's email was difficult to search. Whenever your Spurgy mods would put me in timeout, I would try to use a sock, and I would never be able to find your channel under the sock.
Can you hear me right now?
Yes, because of Hillary's 30,000 emails every time you search for that. So, yeah, that might have been a good idea to change your name. And the trusty ape is here. How's it going? Right. Hey, okay, so skeptic philosophy is back, and
so the claim that I made, and I think was the basis of our disagreement, was that Jesus said that this generation shall not pass away before all these things are fulfilled. Now, above that passage, there were many things that were listed, and this was an apocalyptic event. And I don't mind getting into the scripture. I'd hope, in fact, that you put it on the page here. I'll pull up a few of them because this was mentioned in 3 of the 4 Gospels. And we also have another scripture in Mark that says that this generation shall not taste death before all these things be fulfilled. The early church believed that Christ was going to come back.
Well, hold on. Before you go off on it. Before you go off on a rabbit trail.
This problem
can you hear me?
Jesus didn't come back. And
can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me? Hello. Before you go off on a rabbit trail, that's not the contention, because Jesus did say within a generation. Okay, the argument, maybe you didn't read it in the side chat, or maybe you didn't hear me a few seconds ago, is that Jesus is predicting his coming in judgment. Okay, the moniker or the idiom coming in the clouds always represented judgment in the Old Testament. So when Jesus says he's coming in the clouds, he is saying he is coming to judge Israel. And that did happen within a generation in 70 AD. And there were people who were alive who saw that fulfillment, or who saw that prophecy being fulfilled. Okay.
Do you think this is a mainline Christian position?
Of course it is. It's always
I don't
been the
think
case
it
for
is.
decades.
This is more of a
Is
preterist
this your
position.
first? Let me ask you a question. Is this your first time hearing that position?
No, not at all. A preterist
Fine.
and full preterist use it all the time. That the full fulfillment of that was done. But that is a preterist position, not really a Christian position.
Well, that's not my position. I didn't say the full prophecy was fulfilled, because there are several, just like all of the prophets. After
Sure,
the
but he
greatest
said all
prophet
of
of them
these
all.
things will be fulfilled. That means we have to look at the full prophecy of what was above that text. So in that context, we're talking about three or four things that were mentioned there, and he says all these things will be fulfilled. So
All
all of
these
them
things will
are
be fulfilled.
criteria. We'll look at the verses on.
Okay. All these things, all what things will be fulfilled? So what's the book, chapter, and verse? What's the book, chapter, and verse? Do you have the book, chapter, and verse? I guess his mic went out, maybe. Your mic is muted. You muted yourself, so let me see if I can find the book, chapter, and verse. Yeah, what's the book?
I put it on the side here. We got several
Okay.
different verses on this. We got Mark 19, 24 through 30 is one of them. Again, this is mentioned in 3 different gospels. So this is a pretty
19.
consistent prophecy.
It is a prophecy speaking about Jesus coming in judgment. So, yeah, there are things that are spoken about that will happen within a generation, and then there are things that are spoken about that will happen when Jesus returns the second time. But what's the book, chapter, and verse? Let's pull it up on the screen.
I put it on the side there. Did you see the Mark thing? I'm sorry, I sent it to you on the message page of this app, whatever this app is. This Duck app.
Free Palestine. Palestine is free. Free to leave. You put it in the private chat. Okay, Mark 13. Let's pull up Mark 13. And that's the 24th verse. We'll just pull up.
That was Matthew also. Matthew 24 4 through 5 and up to 11 also mentions it.
All right, we'll pull up Matthew 24. And I want you to notice something here right off the bat. When you do a Google search, I'm going to share my screen. I want you to notice what the translators noticed. Okay. You say there's this Christian mainline teaching. Yeah, it is. It's been for decades. I don't know where you've been or who you've spoken to, but that's
I actually used to be in the ministry. I used to be a Pentecostal preacher. So yeah, okay. I'm fairly familiar with the historicity of the Christian claim, but everything there being fulfilled is not claimed. So
okay, what does that say? They titled Matthew 24, the chapter. They subtitled it. What does that say? The destruction of what?
Yeah, they titled it that, but that's not everything that is in the verse. These titles weren't written there originally. You do know that.
Did you hear my explanation? That part of the prophecy is prophesying about the destruction of the temple, and that is when Jesus says this will happen within a generation. And then there are parts of the prophecy that deal with the end times. So we can't make Jesus.
You're cutting this apart even after Jesus said all these things will be fulfilled.
Okay.
So you're saying all, but not all.
Okay.
So he said all, but not all is what you're doing.
What
he said that the Son of Man will come in glory.
Hold on. All what things? Because I can be talking about going to the grocery store in one breath and say all the things will be accomplished, and then in another breath I could be talking about something else. So prophecy oftentimes mentions more than one event. That's why even the translators recognize it.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with you just pulling the verses and reading it, because it feels like you're injecting everything into this turkey you want to put in it.
Obviously, someone agrees with me so far. The subtitle of this Bible Gateway agrees with me so far. That's
No
all I'm pointing
kidding.
out.
Anyone that
That,
it
all I'm pointing
was
out.
past the point that Jesus didn't come,
Okay.
those people were highly disappointed. This is
Okay,
why
hold on.
Clement had to address this crowd.
Before you get to move the goalposts to talking about people being disappointed later, because Jesus didn't return. My pastor was disappointed he didn't return either.
No. They were disappointed
Okay.
in 96 AD when Clement was addressing the
that's
church.
irrelevant. That's
because,
irrelevant.
Well,
Hold
the
on.
reason
That's
that
irrelevant.
it's relevant is because
Let's
it was
not
the
go.
earliest
Let's stay
translation
here.
of his prophecy, though.
Let's stay here. Let's not talk about what people's expectations were later.
Well, you get
Just
to
like my pastor,
reimagine it
just
when
like
the prophecy doesn't get
hold on.
fulfilled is
You're
the
moving the
problem, though.
goalposts. Now I have to
No.
defend people's expectation hundreds of years later.
It's not
Okay?
hundreds of years later.
Or
It is
20
the
years
next
later,
generation.
or 30 years later.
He said this generation will not pass away, and then the
and
next
this
generation is like,
did
what
not
happened?
pass away. The destruction of the temple
My
happened.
father and my mother, they
Okay,
all
so-
thought that that Jesus was going to
All
come
right, so
again.
let's not move the goalposts. Let's stay here. The destruction of the temple and signs of the end times. Do you agree that the
I don't really care
translators-
about any of your doctrine. I care about
this
the
isn't my
verses. If you
doctrine,
want to
sir.
read the
Listen
verses,
to my
that would be
question.
best.
Listen to my question. I'm not asking you about my doctrine. Okay? Listen to my question, please, and then answer if you can. Do you agree that the translators of this passage on Bible Gateway, a highly respected Bible app that billions and millions of people use, do you agree at least that they are saying what I'm saying? That this passage, Matthew 24, is describing two major events, at least two major events, the destruction of the temple and the signs of the end times. Do you agree?
I have no idea what their intentions are.
Okay,
it has
is that the
one
subtitle
short
that you
sentence.
see here?
That is the subtitle that I
Okay,
see here.
thank you.
We can put
Now
any subtitle on that you want to put on
Okay,
that. That
thank
is
you.
not the words
Now-
that were spoken in the prophecy.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to go to a better version of Matthew 24 that doesn't have all those advertisements. So give me 1 second. A better app, if you will, or page. I don't like to be scrolling through advertisements when I'm reading the word. All right. So I'm going to pull up let's do the ESV. Seems pretty clear of ads. And I'm going to share my screen. And you're going to demonstrate what? That Jesus was only talking about one thing, that he wasn't talking about two different events. But
I want to say this over and over because I feel like I keep beating this dead horse. All these things shall be fulfilled.
All what
I want to be clear. The things before that verse was said, that's what we're going to look at if we just go ahead and read it.
All right. So what verse are you pointing to?
I think this starts, and we need to read it all in its context. It's probably starting at verse 4 all the way to 11, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, verse 4. All right. And Jesus answered, see that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. Is this one of the things Jesus was referring to that would happen? This is a prophecy. Is this one of the things that Jesus was referring to?
Sure, you can say that's prophetical. He is saying these things will happen.
Okay,
but
is
there's
this
more.
one?
No, not one of the things I'm referring to.
Oh, it's not. Why are you picking and choosing which part of the prophecy?
Okay, it is then.
If
you want it to be, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's not relevant to what wasn't done.
Okay,
but
so
sure,
when he says all these things must occur, this is one of those things that must occur.
Sure, totally fine with that.
Before what happens? Before the end? I agree. All right, so and see, all these things must happen, right, before the end. It's not necessarily saying that it's only speaking about what's going to lead up to the end. That was your assumption. Okay, you should never make an ass out of yourself by assuming. And Jesus answered them, see that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Okay. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Let me get some shout outs in the chat. Halsey's in the chat. And St. Tommy. Hey, how's it going, St. Tommy? Click on the link. Come on in. Especially if you think you found some sort of contradiction in the Bible. And once we're finished with this one, if you have 3 more, if you have 2 more, I'll entertain 2 more. Okay. I'll entertain 2 more because 3 strikes and you're out. 3 strikes and you have to repent. Deal? Skeptic?
I'm sorry, you haven't read all of the verses that I referred to, and I don't understand why we're having this conversation.
3. I said once I'm done decimating this so-called false prophet.
Decimating this. You haven't even read the damn verse. I don't know why you're prolonging this so much. What's the problem? I
just gave some shout outs in the chat. I'll give you 2 more opportunities. Is that fair?
Are you one of those people that never read the Bible and you have arguments based on premises that you
I'm not making an argument, sir.
All right, then can we read or what's the problem?
All right, let's continue. See that no one leads you astray, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. And you will hear wars and rumors of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are but beginning of birth pains. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations. And then the end will come. Okay. Is there anything there you wanted to speak on, or are you there? I think our buddy is using a microphone.
Sorry, I got a hot button that keeps applying it to another app.
Okay.
But
all right. So, was there anything you wanted to say about
that? Actually, it is there's no problem with that. It is further than that passage. It's further than this passage, though. And I'm sorry if I don't have all of the verses here, but let me.
Okay, let's keep going. So when you so when you verse 15. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Okay, so he's telling people to flee to the mountains, those who are in Judea. Is he describing his second coming? Let me ask you a question here. Is Jesus describing his second coming by telling people to flee to the mountains and hide? Yes or no?
No, he does that in verse 30.
Context is king. Okay, so here, what is he describing here? If he's telling people to flee, what do you think he's describing?
An apocalyptic-like event.
An apocalyptic event?
An apocalyptic-like event. I mean, if people are running for the hills, we use that term now. When all hell is going to break loose, you run for the hills. That's even a modern term. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Women who are pregnant, pray for those who are nursing in those days. Pray for your flight, that it might not be in winter or in Sabbath. Okay, so there's still winter, there's still a Sabbath. Okay, but you're saying this is some sort of apocalyptic event. For there will be great tribulation, such has not been from the beginning of the world.
Yeah, this is only one version of it, and of this in the Gospels. And first of all, most scholars date Matthew as a later of the Gospels. So, I mean, this was even written after the fall of the temple. So it can act like it's prophecy at this point, and that's fine that if it was already prophecy. But when Matthew was written, these things were already known that the temple would fall. So,
okay. For there will be great tribulation, such as not been from the beginning of the world until now, and will never be. And if those days not be cut short, no human will be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Okay, that's another hint. Okay, so this is not the end. Okay, because it's speaking about the elect for the sake of the elect. All right, then if anyone says to you, look here, but see, what we have here is a candy cane. Okay, we don't just have two stripes, we have a candy cane. They're intertwined. Okay, that's my argument. So you're going to see elements from
what
both.
Are you talking about?
Okay, then if anyone says to you, look here is the Christ. Did you want to speak on any of these verses so far? Or did they?
Nope, fine with all of them. Let's lock
or?
them all into that final statement that all these things will be fulfilled. I'm fine with that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So if I list a bunch of things and I say all these things must be fulfilled, then I'm talking about all these things from the very first verse, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, pretty much.
So your argument is defeated. Because if all of these things are be fulfilled, then you have to include where he talks about them fleeing, and also when he talks about them being false prophets, the wars, all of these things must occur before the end. I'm not seeing what your argument is anymore, at least. But let's keep reading. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there is he, don't believe it. Will that thing happen before the end? Of course it will. All of these things will occur before the end. Then if anyone says to you, or for a false Christ and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, that's going to happen before the end, so as to lead people astray, if possible, even the elect. Now, don't pray, Christian. It's not possible to fool the elect. Okay, you're not going to be fooled by any of this stuff. Jesus has not returned. Okay, so this is not speaking about Jesus' second coming. Okay, because we still have the elect. We still have false prophets.
Sorry, I couldn't help but notice that word elect. Are you Calvinist?
Now you want to take the tulip challenge. Okay, we're going to get
No, I'm asking because you throw that term.
Are you finished with this so-called false prophecy?
Not at all. Understand? Not at all. You haven't even warmed up.
Do you have any arguments so far? Where is the false prophecy?
Absolutely. It says that he will come in the clouds with glory, and then it says this generation shall not pass away before all these things are fulfilled.
Okay.
So it's acting like that generation will see him come in the clouds of glory.
Do you know what it means?
Just all of these things.
Do you know what it means to come here? Here's the passage. Do you know where he got this from? Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light. So do you know where he got these terms, these idioms, if you will?
Sure, Isaiah, if I had to guess on it, is the closest match, but nonetheless, regardless of where he got it, he said all of these things will happen. Then he said, and this generation will not pass away before these things are fulfilled.
Okay, so
but that generation did happen, and the sun did not darken, and all these things didn't happen. He didn't come in the clouds with glory.
How do you know he's referring when he says immediately after the tribulation of those days? You're suggesting that he's
wait. You said the tribulation of those days. You believe there was a tribulation that already happened?
But I'm reading what verse 29 says.
Okay.
Okay. Do you believe that he is referring to, or what time do you believe he's referring to here? You believe he's referring to his second coming? And
yes,
you believe that
he's referring to his second coming, coming in the clouds of glory. I think this isn't the only verse that we run into. Again, it's in 3 of the 4 Gospels, and it was believed by the early church that is what he meant.
That is what he meant. That's why the subtitle.
That generation passed away.
You're connecting before this generation will not. You're connecting that to every part of the prophecy. And that's
I am
not what I would
of the sentence structure that said this generation will not pass away before all these things are fulfilled. Yeah, I am connecting it because it's English. That's how English reads. It means before this is fulfilled, this generation will not pass away.
Right. Okay, so this part of the prophecy is speaking about the coming of man. And that's not how biblical prophecy works, by the way. Because in biblical prophecy, you can have a fulfillment literally within the next chapter, like Isaiah 7 and 8.
Here's what I
But
think,
yet,
if you don't mind, because
yet,
you've been doing a fair amount of the talking other than just reading the Bible.
okay.
Here's what I think. I think we got 3 different books that say that, and we have the additional one in Mark that says that some among you shall not taste of death before these things are fulfilled.
Mhm.
And it refers to very much the same type of prophetical kind of end times, the sun darkening and the moon
That's
not
right.
giving its light and what for, and it refers to him coming on the clouds of glory. And when we after that we say this generation shall not taste of death before all these things happen. That led the vast majority of the Christians at that time, the beginning of the convert, to believe that they would
Okay.
see these things fulfilled in their life. And rightly so, they believed it. They believed it because
But they
that's what
didn't
it
live
said.
they didn't live within a generation. So they
I don't
weren't
understand.
around in 70 AD. So so to mention that the fact that Clement 20, 30, 50 years later, after the destruction of the temple, you said 90,
It would
around
be
90,
20. It would be 95 AD is when
95,
he made his
95.
address of first
Okay,
coming.
so
It would be
that's
95
after the
AD.
destruction of the temple, right?
Correct. That would be 20
Okay,
years
so
after the destruction of the
so
temple,
I would
which was
okay,
the
so
apex of
I
the
would expect
apocalyptic event.
hold on. I would expect any Christian to believe that's the case. Just like there are Christians today that believe Jesus is going to return when they see what's going on in the world. That's not evidence that Jesus is not doing what I am arguing he's doing. He is prophesying about both. He is prophesying about the destruction of Jerusalem and also his second coming. And again,
Yeah, I
the
agree with you on
translators
both of
agree.
those statements. The only thing that I disagree is he is prophesying about both, and he says that this generation will not pass away before it
Until
happens.
both happens, until both
Right.
things happen, until everything in the prophecy happens.
Correct.
Okay, that's your assumption, but I'm going through the
Seems like a
text.
pretty straightforward reading. And if you
I'm
don't
going.
like
Well,
that
we haven't
Matthew
read.
one, we
Well,
can look
I
at it in
asked.
Mark, or we can look
We
at it
just
in,
read. Well, hold
in
on.
Luke.
We just. You said it's a straight reading. We've been reading, and you haven't made any points yet.
That's
So let's
because
keep
I
going.
gave you the benefit of the doubt that we wanted the whole context of the
Let's keep going.
prophecy, so I let you start at a very early point.
Okay, let's keep going. Verse
Okay.
29. Immediately after that, the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man. And all the tribes of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branches becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So, when you see all these things, you know that he is near at the very gates. Truly, I say, this generation will not pass until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will not pass, but my words will not pass away.
Okay.
Okay?
That's
Then he
the
goes
full
on to say, no
context.
one knows the day or the hour.
Sure. Don't mind stacking any of that in there, because
Okay,
all
so-
of it needs to be taken in full context.
Okay,
But when
so
we're
how do
talking
you
about before
determine?
that verse,
Okay.
he said all of these things will be fulfilled, before this generation passes away. Well, that
Okay.
generation passed away. You can
How
then
did you determine? How did
Okay.
you determine that he was referring to his second coming and not referring to him coming in judgment? How did you determine that?
It doesn't really matter if it doesn't. I can even concede that to you, and you can't say that the stars fell from heaven and all of this apocalyptic stuff happened. You can't say that the sun was darkened or the moon didn't give light anymore. This is an apocalyptic event. This is apocalyptic speaking. That everything is going right downhill, and all of this will happen before I return. Now, at the apex of this problem with Rome, and Rome striking out against several of these groups, such as the Jews, and them destroying the temple, at this apex, everybody thought this was it. So whenever all this was going on, and the Romans are to some degree persecuting a bunch of different groups, none more than the Jews at the time, and they destroyed that temple, everybody thought this is it. This is the apex. It's all going downhill.
Are you familiar? Right, because they believe that Jerusalem was the apex falsely they believe that with Jerusalem, there goes the kingdom. But Jesus was speaking of a different kingdom, okay, that they didn't have access to, that they didn't know about. So yes, in the ancient Near East, in ancient Israel, if Israel went, they would say that the sky has fallen. Okay, if you go back into the Old Testament, Jesus is borrowing from the prophets like Ezekiel, Jeremiah. Whenever God comes,
if you want to say it was hyperbole, then just say it was hyperbole.
Let me finish I've said that. It's not necessarily hyperbole, but whenever it's an idiom, whenever the Bible talks about coming in the clouds, it is referring to judgment. Whenever Yahweh rides the clouds, by the way, that's Baal, which is subverted. So Baal is subverted. He's no longer riding the clouds. It's Yahweh who rides the clouds. He controls your destiny. He is the God of war, Jehovah Sabaoth, the Lord of war. So if he is coming in the clouds, it always represented judgment. The sun darkening is something that Isaiah said would happen, but he was referring to
so are you saying that battle. One didn't get fulfilled, or what are you talking about?
It got fulfilled in 70 AD.
The sun was darkened, the stars fell from the sky.
Again,
he came in the clouds of glory.
Again, the verses surrounding the passage, as the writer explained, or the translators explain, is referring to many different things, not just one. He's speaking about future events. He already told. Are you familiar with the Olivet Discourse?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so he already told the Olivet Discourse is where Jesus prophesies about the destruction of Jerusalem and his second coming. So
are we talking about Matthew, or what are we talking? Because there's a long history of this.
Mark,
and the reason
Mark 13, Luke 21.
The reason that I want to mention this is because when we're talking about things in Mark, most of these scholars are dating this, they're dating Mark as the earliest one. And the only one of the Gospels that, if I'm not mistaken, is unanimously agreed by scholars that it is pre-temple fall. So these other Gospels that are written post-temple fall, for them to say, oh yeah, the temple will fall. Well, no kidding. You're writing it after the event already happened and acting as if it's prophecy. But as far as Mark referring to this, if Mark said it, it predates the temple falling. So is there some merit to it prophesying? Yeah.
Yeah, these are prophecies. No one is denying that. The word degeneration refers to people alive in the future when the events take place. No one is denying that.
I think you're mistaken, or no one's denying that, because there's many Christian apologetics that try to reinterpret the word generation, and in the other verse,
we're not doing that here.
I know, but I'm just telling you, this is a mainstream.
I don't know anyone that does that. Well, that's not a mainstream approach. It's not a mainstream approach. Just like the prophecy only being about one thing was a mainstream approach. It's not about one thing.
It's generally a lot easier to defend those positions and kind of steel man that than to try to explain that he came again a second time in the clouds with power, that the stars fell and these apocalyptic events happened before that generation passed, because then you got a lot of work ahead of you, because we don't have any reason to believe any of those things happened. And there's definitely not any historians of the time of Rome that would say anything about all the stars falling and the sun not giving its light and all of these giant apocalyptic claims.
Okay. So I can care less about what my pastor says Jesus will return in his lifetime. Not my pastor, but there are many pastors that say that. That Jesus can return at any time. A good pastor is going to preach that. Okay, so prepare.
You know why it's relevant. Tomorrow. You know why it's relevant, and the reason that
there is no relevance to a pastor saying
no. Jesus it's relevant that tomorrow. The early church believed it, because once it didn't,
the church
happen,
today believes that. The church today believes
they
that.
believe that it was going to happen in their generation. That's not the same.
The church today is still preaching that. So you're not moving the proverbial ball forward by saying that the church in the 2nd century believed that. Every generation believes that they are the last generation. Where have you been the past generation?
I don't know that every generation believes that. We have
Every
people among
generation.
every generation that believes
Well,
that.
of
And
course,
they
the
have people
believers.
among those, but
The
it's
believers,
not a
yes.
it's not a main straw, position that the vast majority of believers think it's going to happen in their life. Now, I don't doubt that there's some generations that have, that more holistically believe that, but to say that all of these different generations, they all kind of majority believe that it was going to happen in their generation. I think a lot of people took the pastoral caveats of saying that no man knows the day or the hour in which he cometh, and they took that to heart to say, look, I don't need to be trying to make predictions about when he's coming. Do I think that still some people did? Yes. But do I think the first generation was highly warranted in that position? Highly warranted, because it's how they understood it as a straightforward reading.
Okay, from a Christian perspective, every generation is expecting the return of Christ imminently, to be imminent, to be in their lifetime, including my own generation.
And that's all fine and dandy, but it's different when you have Jesus saying that this generation won't pass.
Right, but what is he referring to? So again, you're defaulting to, without demonstrating, that Jesus is referring only to one thing and not a double fulfillment, only to one fulfillment, which is his second coming in glory, when we saw in the passage that he is intertwining both or two events. And
okay, so did the second coming happen?
He came in glory, but no,
that wasn't the second coming.
The second coming, what we call the second coming, which is not even used here, that term is not used here, second coming. He just talks about returning.
Sure, but it would be the second time.
So, well, if he's coming in judgment, then he would be coming again the third time. So when we say the second coming, we mean when he's coming to restore all things, not when he's coming in judgment. Okay, that's not considered a second coming in Christian lingo, if you will.
All right, so is it Christian lingo that there are three comings, that we have the original the message coming, then we have the judgment coming, and then we have a third coming, which is a redemption coming? Is that Christian lingo, or is that
we have several?
I never heard of it.
We have Jesus appearing as in the Old Testament as a Christophany. Okay, so but when we say second coming, we mean when he restores all things, and it's going to happen quickly. It's not going to be a drawn out war for 3 or 4 years, like 70 AD, like the judgment. But when he comes in judgment, you will hear that apocalyptic language. That language always, check the Old Testament. Check me on this. Don't just believe me. That language
it's
always
a cop out to use this as hyperbole to say
it's not hyperbole.
Well, I don't know what else you want to call it then. When you're saying the stars will fall, the sun will be darkened.
So you think the stars are literally going to fall? Is that literally?
Clearly, I don't think that. I don't think that first century peasants very well knew what the stars were. Okay. But I do think that this is what they're referring to, a great apocalyptic event, not just the fall of a temple.
So when Ezekiel says stars are going to fall, what was he referring to? Stars actually falling, or was he referring to Babylon? Perhaps their arrows blotting out the sign.
It really depends if you reinterpret it after they realize what stars are.
No. Don't tell me about reinterpretation. Ezekiel
is reinterpretation. Hold on. I mean, I don't know what you want to call it.
Ezekiel is using this language. Was Ezekiel, according to the story, was he referring to some sort of apocalyptic event in which God is going to open up the sky and return? Or was he referring to an impending attack? Yes or no?
I don't know. I mean, if it's if the stars aren't falling, he just means, an attack is going to happen. Then why use the hyperbole of the stars are going to fall? This is sensationalizing.
It is sensationalism. Yes, and that is how they prophesied. So Jesus, who is the greatest prophet of them all, is going to borrow from his contemporaries.
So he just talked up a big game, is what it sounded like, but nothing really was going to happen. But the temple,
no stars were literally going to fall from the ground, but Jerusalem was wiped out, burnt to the ground, burnt to a crisp.
And he came in the clouds of glory and power.
They haven't built the third temple since.
I fail to understand what that has to do with anything.
It has this destruction to the Jewish people, the epicenter of their entire ethnicity, is the temple. To the Jewish people, this is like a star falling from the sky.
Are we
This is
are we
huge to them.
sure that God is not the author of confusion? Are
This
you
is
content with
huge.
that statement that God is not the author of confusion?
Just because you don't understand, I don't know why you don't
No.
understand.
You already dismissed my
Because
first basis. It
well,
wasn't just me. The early
hold on,
church believed
hold
that
on.
he was
No,
coming
no, no,
back,
no.
that it
Don't
was
go
coming
back
to
to
an
that
end.
argument, please. Don't go back to that argument. That argument
Well,
doesn't.
you said me just because you don't understand.
Hold
And
on.
I'm saying it's not just
Don't.
me, it's the whole early church.
Every church believes when they look at the times, when they look at the events, especially those who are in countries where they don't have the cushion that I'm sitting on right now. They all believe that Jesus is going to return because it's so bad. Okay? So please, let's stay away from that
That's
and let's
not the
try to deal
basis
with
of why they believed it, though. When Clement addressed that crowd was saying, as Clement quoted, that their father and their mother, that they did pass away and that he didn't come. So it's not
okay,
just
so
the
they have the
basis
same
of
problem you
things
had.
are going on. Right.
So they have right. Okay, so good. So that's why I'm here.
Clement was taking the position and trying to defend that Jesus didn't come because everyone clearly read that prophecy of that he was going to come back and that this was going to be the end.
Clement was correct. Clement was correct. So Clement he did what I'm trying to help you with today.
If you read Clement's ridiculous defense of this, you wouldn't be so quick to defend it.
Let's not be distracted by Christian groups who come later who have the same biblical illiteracy you do. Okay. Now let's go back to the old.
I just don't reimagine everything to try to make it fit.
Reimagining.
You have a frame that you're working through that it can't be contradictory. No, but can we address this? Can we address
the Old Testament?
You have a narrative that you have to reinterpret everything
the Old Testament where this narrative came from.
But your narrative is that it cannot be a contradiction.
Let's deal with the Old Testament where Jesus is borrowing. Let's deal with the Old Testament where he gets these terms from.
Sure, hit me with it.
Okay, in the Old Testament, these same idioms are used, this hyperbole, stars falling from heaven. When the authors used it 6 or 7 times, I can point you to. In every single instance, was there one case that wasn't referring to war? Yes or no?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that, but
the answer is no.
I know what's going on is it's the large fish argument. Is it a lie or is it just bragging up the large fish? When someone says, "Oh, my fish was 20 feet long," no, mine was 30 feet long. Oh no, they're not lying. That's just hyperbole. They're engaging in this. So it sounds to me what you're now trying to defend is that Jesus wasn't lying. He was just bragging it up as if it was going to be some great thing because a lot of other people have bragged it up. And that is a way of defending something that is dishonest and not true under the guise of saying, well, other people use this hyperbole.
Yes. So you don't have anything but what you believe. I at least point to the text showing there's precedent for this type of language to be used to describe war. You, on the other hand, don't have anything to point to.
Is there precedent for him coming in the clouds of glory? Is there a verse on that?
Yes.
You got one that he used that somewhere in Isaiah or something also?
Isaiah, Ezekiel, all use that terminology to describe an impending attack.
But coming in the clouds of glory with power, they use this as, I'm ready for the verse. I'm ready.
Okay. Well, I don't have the passages in front of me, so I have to do some searching. But coming in clouds, according to biblical scholars, if you want to Google that, coming in the clouds, it does refer to the second coming of Christ, and it also refers to Jesus also uses it to describe impending judgment. And the reason why we say that, the reason why scholars have come to that conclusion, is because all of the prophets did this. Whenever they were describing an impending attack, they would also describe an end time event, an apocalyptic event. And they would sort of juxtapose the two, they would sort of mix the two together in a candy cane. So you have a red stripe and you have a white stripe. It's what scholars call typological prophecy. Have you heard of that term? And it looks like I wasn't cut off, so it looks like we lost our guest.
No, not at all. I'm around here.
Okay. Have you ever heard of typological prophecy?
No, it sounds like a word they make up to use explain why something didn't get fulfilled. Please explain how that's what it is exactly.
Hey, brother Veckles in the chat. Anyone interested in coming in? Skeptic Philosophy is my guest, and we're discussing the prophecy of Jesus returning a second time. And my position
or a third time at this point.
Well, when we say second coming again, we mean it's over. Okay.
Right. But this was a second
world as
coming.
we know it. The world as we know it.
If it happened.
Okay. I say that this is typological prophecy. That this is similar to what Matthew did with the virgin birth. Okay. Now, Rabbi Shmachach may come along and say, no, that's wrong. Who cares? We don't really care what you think. Matthew says this is typological when it comes to Jesus's birth, even though there was a literal fulfillment that happened in the very next chapter, Isaiah 8.
I wish you would at least admit that you're first operating off the premise that there can't be a contradiction. You're making a faith attachment and you're doing an anchoring effect that says, well, there can't be a contradiction. So therefore we have to make all of these presuppositions to make sure that this isn't a contradiction. And I really wish apologetics could be honest with this, because they're starting off with this in advance that it can't be. It's not possible that it's a contradiction. And then they're rectifying everything by moving everything around. Well, it's hyperbole, other people use these terms and everything like this, but this is what's going on.
All right, you finished?
Yeah, my headset did cut out, so if you were talking for a minute, wasn't hearing it. That's why I kept going.
Okay. All right, so what I would say is that this prophecy, after the pattern, there are patterns in scripture. So Jesus, the greatest prophet of them all, and the heir to the linguistic throne of the Old Testament, which is a literary masterpiece, I'm arguing that he is using the same pattern. You prophesy about an impending attack using, yes, very, very flowerful language. Okay, this is how they communicated. They didn't have TV screens where they can put.
Can we get some input from some people in the comms to see if they think there's a third coming that is called the second coming?
No one said there's a third coming.
Well, I mean, if that was a second coming, if he did come in the clouds with power and glory, and you're saying that was fulfilled, then that was the second time. Even if we're calling the third one, the second coming, it still was a second time.
Well, Jesus coming in judgment is a figurative meaning, has a figurative meaning that he's coming in judgment. So it's not a second coming. The second coming traditionally refers to Jesus Christ returning, where he steps his foot on Mount Olive and he changes all things. All things become new. He resurrects the dead, etc. Okay, so Jesus coming in judgment. Again, prophets do both. When they prophesy about a greater intensification of a coming, and then they also prophesy about a coming in judgment, which could happen tomorrow. When Isaiah prophesied, he prophesied about a physical birth. And at the same time, he prophesied about a spiritual birth, which Matthew comes along later and says, but this was said to fulfill the birth of Christ. So I have precedent. I'm asking you, what evidence do you have that that's not the case? That somehow Jesus is only prophesying about what you want him to prophesy about, and he's not following after any pattern. He's making his own pattern, basically. And it looks like we lost our brother. If anyone else wants to come in and click on the link, please, by all means. I saw Brother Veckel in the chat. So within a generation, for me at least, or this generation will not pass, I can connect that to part of the prophecy that is referring to his imminent coming in judgment. Okay. And we can also, a greater intensification of that idiom will be realized when he comes a second time. Zachariah says that they will
Can
see
you
the
hear
one
me? Am I muted? Did I get muted by someone?
you were muted, but I don't know
Okay.
how, but
Oh,
you
I'm sorry.
were muted for a while.
What's strange to me is there is a curve here that is happening. There's an early church group that is seeing the interpretation, and how they're originally reading it is, okay, he's going to come back. This is all going to be over, when he comes back. And then we get the apocalyptic escalation, that we get the war, we get the destruction of the temple, but Jesus doesn't come back. And then the church, the group that is now the new generation, has to struggle with reinterpreting this. They have to now reinterpret what they thought was pretty straightforward, and what they thought this is what it meant. Now they have to struggle with reinterpreting it. And I'm sure that modern Christians are happy to reinterpret it that way, to make sure that the consistency of it is still there, and that there's still hope that, yeah, Jesus is going to come again another time. But that's what is happening here. There was a group that accepted this is what it meant. Then, oh, that didn't happen. And now a new group is saying, oh, well, we got to look at it this way then, to make sure that, everything's matching up now.
Okay. Well, you argued earlier that Clement was correcting people who were writing him that had that same, what I would consider to be false assumption about the text. So obviously there was someone who agreed with me before this generation. But okay, I mean, that's your interpretation. I guess we have to disagree. My interpretation does not render a false prophecy. And again, I have precedent in the Old Testament where prophets are doing the same thing Jesus did.
Yeah, nothing about the clouds, though. I get the hyperbole of what you're referring to, of you're stretching the big fish of right. Yeah. No, that's fine if you want to say you have precedent of that referring to a war, but the truth be told, that wasn't referring to a war until after it just became a war and no apocalyptic event happened. And then those also got interpreted as, oh, well, it was just hyperbole, So now we're using hyperbole that wasn't fulfilled as an example of this just being hyperbole. Okay. Or prophecy that wasn't fulfilled was turned into hyperbole, and now we're using this as an example of that.
Right. Well, there is this is an in-house debate. To be honest with you, there are many Christians, as you mentioned, that do disagree with me. But I am not a preterist. I would be considered a partial preterist. So there's a distinction. You sort of conflated the two. It's preterist, and then there's a literal interpretation, which it seems as though you.
Well, I thank you for you saying that you are a partial preterist. I got the sense that you were both a partial preterist and to some degree a Calvinist, just based on your lines of argument. Yeah. This is, I do hold that this is connected to the Olivet Discourse and the destruction of the temple. Okay, but the second coming is yet to come. Just like when Isaiah prophesied about Jesus, about Isaiah, about him having a son, his son was literally born in the very next chapter. Yet, typologically, that same prophecy was pointing to Jesus. But you are aware that even now, not just back with the early church and that big shift, but even now we have full preterists that believe that in 70 AD, when all that went down, that all of it was fulfilled, that the fullness of the prophecy was fulfilled. And they think that the dispensation of Christianity has basically come to an end, that this is just lagniappe, that we're living in the new age and new generation, that the second coming already happened.
Yeah, we do have a preterist in the community, and yes, we've heard his arguments, and they are tiresome. Okay. So, I mean, I'm glad that you saw that there is a disagreement within the Christian community. But did you have anything that you would say that all Christians agree with?
No,
That
all
you
Christians haven't agreed on anything, not even the resurrection in the early days. I mean, they had groups
okay?
that didn't believe the resurrection happened or that it was a spirit and not flesh and blood. There's never been one subject that all Christians agreed on.
Okay. Well, give me another contradiction or failed prophecy, maybe. And if no one's going to click on the
Unfortunately,
link,
it's been a great conversation, but I do have a movie coming up with my wife at 10 o'clock.
Oh,
And
okay. What movie
so
are you
I
watching?
don't know yet. She is picking one presently.
Oh,
So,
she gets to pick the movie.
yeah, sometimes
Tell her,
we get into some
tell
shows
her you
too.
picked the movie this time.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the
Yeah.
conversation. I appreciate it staying professional and whatnot. We do
Okay.
disagree, and there's nothing wrong with disagreeing and having a civil conversation about it. But I
Yeah.
appreciate it,
Well,
man.
yeah. Thanks for coming on, and subscribe to my channel. So
I did. I
don't
want to
normally.
tell you also, you have a troll that has made a channel that is just like this, that has
Oh yeah,
3
yeah. I know who
videos.
that is.
Okay, I was over on that channel for a minute waiting and subscribed to it before I went in and clicked on the link and seen that it said on the bottom, Jesus lies. And then I said, what the heck is this? Is this guy trolling me? And then I
Yeah.
actually went and dropped into another channel. I thought I was done for tonight because I thought you were trolling me and you came in there and you messed with me, but you were actually an atheist. And I was like, I forget this guy. I don't even want to have this conversation with him. So then I said, no, that can't be. Let me look this guy up. And I finally found your right channel and I got in here. Sorry I was late, but that's what delayed me. I found a troll.
Oh no, that's fine. That's fine. That's Peter, I believe. That's Peter the whoremonger who did that.
Okay. Yeah. I actually thought it was you that was the troll. So I was about done with the subject, but I just decided to look into it a little bit better. And then I found you.
Yeah. Be careful out there. This is dangerous. This is a minefield, this YouTube community.
Yep.
But
have a good one, man. Take care.
I'll catch you
All
next time.
later.
God bless. All right. Nice guy. But he wants a literal interpretation. Stars are going to be falling down from the sky, ladies and gentlemen. I guess no one told him that if a star even began to approach the Earth, if a star even began to approach the Earth, we wouldn't. The second coming better come soon before that star even begins to approach. All right, so did Jesus predict his second coming within a generation? And again, by second coming, we don't mean his coming in judgment. I think the partial preterist interpretation is probably the safest, especially when you have skeptics. Oh, that's why you took that partial preterist interpretation, because you wanted to win these arguments. No, that's not why. I think it makes the most sense, again, because it is consistent with the Old Testament. Now, again, Rabbi Singer is going to come along and say Matthew was wrong, that he should not, that the apostles were wrong. But I believe this is what they did with the prophecies in the Old Testament. Everything changed after Christ resurrected. The way they read the Old Testament prophecies changed. I admit that. But they had good reason to say, hey, wait a minute. I know Alma is not virgin. We know that. It's a young maiden. I know Isaiah had his son in the very next chapter. Surely Matthew, being a Jew, would have read the very next chapter. He didn't stop in chapter 7 and then decide to write, hey, this is fulfilled in Christ. A typological prophecy. Let me just get you a definition of what typology is. Okay, it's very important, especially when you're talking to a Jewish person, because a Jewish person, they're not taught this. In fact, they reject this notion, of course, because they take more of a literal interpretation. Okay, that Isaiah was predicting the birth of the kid had about 20 letters in his name. I felt so sorry for him in kindergarten. That must have been rough. Okay, but literally, but it's do I have to even go there? I don't have to go there. Okay, you guys can go to Isaiah chapter 7. In Isaiah chapter 7, the prophet or God says that you're going to have a son. He shall be great or whatever. And it even gives the son's name. And the son's name is not Jesus. Okay? It gives you the name of the son. That son was born in the next chapter, chapter 8. It stretches credulity to suggest that Matthew didn't know about that and decided to say, you know what? That prophecy in chapter 7 is referring to Jesus, guys. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's put this Bible together now. No, he knew that the literal fulfillment had already occurred. Yet, he still says in the book of Matthew that this was done, that this prophecy was fulfilling or speaking of the birth of Christ, the virgin birth of Christ. Okay. And we know that Mary, the virgin birth of Jesus, is presented in the Gospel of Matthew as fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy from Isaiah 7. Isaiah 7, verse 14. Okay. So again, the partial preterist position makes the most sense. Of course, we will never accept full preterism. In fact, full preterism is heretical. Okay. Jesus did not step down on the Mount Olives. He has not gathered his elect from the four corners. Okay. But what you guys know who preterist is, right? What he'll do is he'll try to spiritualize everything. Hey, pseudonym, how's it going? Click on the link. I'll stay live for another hour, maybe. And any problem you have with the Bible, I know fake pseudo Christian here. I know he has a lot of issues, a lot of theological hangups. I'd love to help you with. I remember in the Bible, the saints came out of the graves. Okay, this is again. Recognize the pattern. The coming out of the graves is a type. In the Bible, you have types and you have anti-types, typology, biblical typology. Oh, that's right. I was going to get you a definition of typology. Okay. That is a foretaste, if you will. It is a hint. In literature, we say foreshadowing. God wrote a literary masterpiece using real people, places, and particulars. Our God wrote a literary masterpiece, meaning he is foreshadowing what's going to happen in real people's lives through the birth of people. Now, they don't even know what's going to be happening, but he is using these real events, like the birth of a child, to foreshadow far future spiritual realities, like the virgin birth of Christ. And he's doing it not through fables, not through Aesop's fables, not through a genre that didn't exist, by the way. So the Bible can't be historical fiction because that genre did not exist. They just didn't have time to write historical fiction, fake history, basically. It just wasn't something you would waste resources doing. Okay. This isn't you just get on your computer and start typing and then hit the print button. and you probably spent about 6 cents on that sheet of paper and the ink. Probably, maybe the ink costs a little bit more. But the Bible study room is here. How's it going? The Bible study room. Did I pin the link? Maybe I didn't pin the link. That's the problem. If anyone is interested in coming in, be my guest. We're talking about contradictions in the Bible, fulfilled prophecy. If you want to talk slavery in the Bible, we can do that as well. There are no contradictions in the Bible. Biblical slavery doesn't exist. And that's that. Those are my positive claims. Prove me wrong. Biblical slavery does not exist. Okay? And I'm gonna pin this chat, or in this chat, I'm gonna pin the link. Just in case someone wants to come in, I'm gonna be here for about another hour. And I'm gonna get you the definition of typological prophecy, like I promised 3 times already. The Bible study room says, was it no, you're talking about the birth, the son of Isaiah. Go to Isaiah chapter 8. Isaiah chapter 8, and it'll tell you who his son was, his name. Okay. Let me spell it for you. No, I'm not spelling this. I'm just going to copy and paste this in the chat. Okay. This is Isaiah's son that was prophesied. Okay. Is his name Jesus? Hmm? Yeah, you could probably make that into Jesus, maybe if you, I don't know, maybe in some other language that's Jesus, but his son was literally born. That's Isaiah's son. Boy, he had it rough in kindergarten. He had it rough, boy. Look at that name, boy. Imagine how many exams he failed because he couldn't spell his name right in preschool, right? No, they don't fail you in preschool. They used to. When I was a kid, no. You get left behind in preschool when I was a kid. Now they just pass you. You show up, they pass you. Typological prophecy. A great resource that I learned a lot of this information I found was equip.org. Equip.org. So that's where I'm going now. And if you're not familiar with Hank Hanegraaff is head of the Christian Research Institute. And before him, before Hank Hanegraaff, there was a man by the name of Walter Martin. He was the original Bible answer man. And when I first got into apologetics, that's just apologetics. Well, the atheist comes in with his apologetics, doesn't he? And oftentimes, his apologetics is just misrepresenting the Bible or picking something that Christians are divided on, like Reformed theology, and suggesting that there is, something wrong with the Bible. The Bible is not clear. Well, there are some things that God can care less which side you pick. I mean, God is not in heaven saying, in heaven micromanaging your faith in that sense. Okay. There are essentials in which Christians are united, in essentials liberty, or in essentials unity, excuse me, in essentials unity, in non-essentials liberty, in all things charity was the saying in the early church days. Here's the article here. typological fulfillment, the key to messianic prophecy. Okay. Now, this is the article. I'll put this in the comment section when I'm done here. Okay. Read this article. Okay. Let me read a little bit of it. I'm not going to be here all night reading articles, but okay. Predictive prophecy. Okay. This is often conflated or confused with typological prophecy. Predictive prophecy is fairly straightforward. As such, Micah 5:2. Okay, predictive is direct. Okay, Isaiah is both. So typological prophecy involves both. It's a candy cane. Okay, a candy cane has two stripes and they're intertwined. So an author can go from talking about one to talking about the other, and you won't even realize you're saying, "Oh, well, this is supposed to be in English." Well, look, you don't set you don't have a patent on communication, liberal. It's not straightforward. The Bible is not clear. It's not written like the New York Times, the New York Slimes. It's not written like Darwin, Origin of the Species. You don't have a patent on how to communicate. Okay, either learn how they communicated if you want to understand what they said, or continue to argue with Christians online about what you think the Bible is saying. Okay, predictive prophecy is straightforward. As such, Micah 5:2 is a predictive prophecy directly and specifically fulfilled with the birth of Christ in Bethlehem. So there's no typology there, direct. Typological prophecy is somewhat more complex in that it involves a divinely intended pattern of events encompassing both historical correspondence and intensification. Did you catch that? There's a historical corresponding reality or event, and then there's an intensification. There is a physical birth historically. There's his name. Try pronouncing that. Try saying that 3 times. And then there is an intensification, a virgin birth of Messiah incarnating, God becoming God with us. Emmanuel, God with us. Okay, so in the Old Testament, you have a historical correspondence. You have some hints, some typology, some foreshadowing, some where it talks about God being with us. Okay. But then in the New Testament, it's like a flower that blooms. Oh, wow. Typology views the relationship of Old Testament events, and again, Rabbi Singer doesn't appreciate this, but there is no doubt the scholars, conservative scholars, don't listen to a liberal scholar, okay, unless you're doing a review video of his nonsense. Okay, scholars have determined that this is consistent with the Old Testament and how they prophesy. So don't ever be ashamed to talk about double fulfillment. Some people call it double fulfillment. I don't necessarily like that term. I like to use typology. It just sounds like I'm right. Typology views the relationship of Old Testament events to those in the new dispensation. This is important, because they'll try to come to you with this. You saw philosophy. What was his name? He tried to come at me with this. Well, this isn't happening. Well, that didn't happen this way. Or this didn't happen. It's not a one-to-one correspondence. Okay, so everything that happened in the old does not have to happen the same way in the new or in the fulfillment. So the antitype and the type, although they are intertwined, they're not the same. One is red, one is white. It's not a one-to-one correspondence where you can't tell the distinction or the difference between the two. Okay, everything that happens in the for instance, it's a young woman. You don't need to have Mary now being a young woman, not necessarily a virgin. Okay, because the woman in Isaiah 7 is not a virgin. She's a young maiden. Okay, it's not a one-to-one correspondence in which the old is repeated or continued, but rather in terms of two principles: historical correspondence and escalation. Okay, and I got to get that citation there. There's a citation there. Read some more books on these topics. Okay, read more books. Put Darwin down. Okay, Darwin is finished. Okay, put the 8-man fantasy down. Okay, you read enough of that. When Matthew says that the virgin birth of Jesus is the fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy, he is speaking of typology or typological rather than predictive fulfillment. Okay. And then this part of the article I don't want to read because it's speaking about how to, but I want you guys to read this because Izzy and Matt are having a conversation about Isaiah and his prophecy about his son. So if you have any Jewish friends or family members, or you might be Jewish, I would recommend reading this article. Okay, and then it's talking about, okay, so here it's talking about typological prophecy, which is somewhat more complex. Okay, if we asked Isaiah whether or not Isaiah 7 is fulfilled with the virgin birth, as Matthew claims, the answer is yes and no. Okay. So Izzy, remember in this story, Izzy is a Jewish person, Jewish man, who's having a conversation with a Christian. Izzy was right. Okay. To contend Isaiah was fulfilled in the birth of Mahashala Hashbaz. Okay. But he was wrong to suppose or assume that Isaiah 7 was not fulfilled in the birth of Messiah. Okay. Why? Because Matthew says so. The Bible tells me so. Here's where you can say, Christian, listen up. Here's where you can say the Bible tells me so, and you can be right. You could be logically, or that's a rational response. Normally, the atheist is right. Normally, the Bible tells me so is not without any explanation is not enough. But here, well, you can say Matthew says so, and Matthew is more of an authority. Listen up, liberal. Matthew is more of an authority because he's closer to the event, to the Advent. He's closer to the language than your Jewish rabbi in the 21st century. He is more of an authority than your rabbi today. Okay? So Matthew says this happened. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel. He is speaking typologically or typological. Should that be typologically? Okay, typological rather than predictive fulfillment. That's right. So what is typology? Okay, here's a definition. I said all that to finally get you a definition. Typology is a type, or a type is a person, event, or institution in redemptive history that prefigures a corresponding but greater reality. The greater reality in which it finds fulfillment is referred to as an anti-type. The writer of Hebrews specifically employs the notion of antitype in referring to the greatness of the heavenly sanctuary, of which the holy temple was merely a type or a shadow. Okay, so the book of Hebrews does this with the temple. All of those things, listen up. And again, we follow the apostles' doctrine. Do not be intimidated by some Jewish man wailing against a wall, which is a pagan wall that Herod built, by the way. Your temple is no more. Jesus literally predicted the destruction of the temple, and he said not one stone will be stacked upon another. So that wall they're wailing up against was a retainer wall that was built later by Herod. It wasn't even a part of the original temple. Okay? Jesus doesn't play with his predictions. Okay? So what they're saying about Isaiah does not hold any weight to Matthew. They couldn't walk in Matthew's shoes. Matthew would be the expert. So his expert opinion would override theirs. Again, he's closer to the language. He spoke the language more than likely. He's closer to the events, to the time. So if you were to do a historical analysis on the two reporters or the two witnesses or the two, if you want to call them historical accounts, a rabbi writing in the 21st century about this, we would suggest that the writer who is closer to the language would be the history that we would accept when it comes to the fulfillment, when it comes to interpretation, all of those things. We would accept his interpretation over Rabbi Schmuck, Rabbi Singer. Okay. In the book of Hebrews, okay, so wait, the writer of the Hebrews specifically employs the notion of antitype in referring to the greatness of the heavenly sanctuary, of which the holy temple was merely a type or shadow. So did the sanctuary exist? Yes, but it was only pointing to a greater intensification. So not only, my friend, skeptic, philosophical skeptic, not only can I show you prophets doing this when they prophesy, but I can show you when it comes to the actual rituals, the feast days, the tabernacle. All of these things point to Christ. That is what the apostles taught. If you want to come argue later, well, they made it that way. Okay. All right. They made it that way. Oh, they twisted things around to make Jesus the Messiah. Okay. In the book of Hebrews, as in the rest of the New Testament, the Old Testament history of Israel is interpreted as succession of types that find ultimate fulfillment in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. Okay. And then let me go down here. The New Testament's typological interpretation of the Old Testament, though often implicit in allusions to the Hebrew scriptures, is made explicit in Paul's epistles. Paul does this. John does this. Matthew does this. Again, we follow the apostles' doctrine, not Rabbi Singer's doctrine. Okay. Hey, Pseudonym, how's it going? Pseudonym is still in the chat. This article is supposed to support your position. Okay, you must not think it does. Typological prophecy is my position. That's what this article is about. Click on the link if you don't think it's supporting my position. I'm confused now. Now I want to go to bed. That's my argument, that this is speaking of a typological prophecy. When Jesus says he's going to return, he's speaking about two different things. Okay, so that's typological prophecy. I remember there are no contradictions in the Bible, right? Anyone want to take the tulip challenge? Maybe a half an hour. Want to take the tulip challenge? Any Christians want to take the tulip challenge? All of you are suppressing the truth and unrighteousness, and you're all Calvinist, even though you don't know it. Many of you just don't know that you're Calvinist. Okay. You do not know that you believe in the Reformed position, that you hold to the Reformed position. You're just in denial. Okay. Fact of the matter, who formerly known as Hillary's email, promised 3 times already, are you Peter reincarnated? Or rather, typologically prophesied. What did I promise 3 times? That I would look up the definition of typology. Maybe that's what Hillary's referring to. Maybe that's what Hillary's referring to. You know what? Now that I'm live, I think I'm going to go ahead. You know what? No, I'm going to say that. I was going to review. G-Man had a discussion with Deconstruction Zone, and I'm going to review that maybe next week. Maybe next Sunday. Not this Sunday coming up, but the Sunday after this Sunday coming up. Because we see, again, the dishonest when it comes to our atheist interlocutor and how they approach the scriptures and how they approach these conversations and how they say one thing and do another. If you're going to do an internal critique, Deconstruction Zone, you didn't deconstruct the Bible. We wrote the Bible in your image. Okay, if you're going to do a internal critique, when a Christian says that this prophecy is fulfilled in Revelation, he already knows Revelation did not occur yet. Because in the Christian worldview, Revelation is future, certain to happen events. So you can't default back to your atheism, your anti-supernaturalism, and say, well, that didn't happen yet. From the Christian worldview, that did happen. The future has already occurred in the eternal realm. We're just playing, things are just played out in the temporal realm. They have to occur in the temporal realm. But because we have revelation, we know what's going to occur. Not everything, but we know these events must occur. So you can't default back to your skepticism when you feel as though you are losing the argument and say, well, no, that's going to happen in the future. That hasn't happened yet. Were you arguing that the prophecy was a failed prophecy? If not, then why were you wasting everyone's time? Were you arguing that the prophecy was a failed prophecy, Deconstruction Zone? Or were you arguing that the prophecy just hasn't happened yet? Were you arguing there's prophecy in the Bible that hasn't happened yet, that hasn't been fulfilled? I doubt it. Christians would agree with that, unless you're a preterist, right? Back to the preterist stuff. Christians would agree there are prophecies in the Bible that have not been fulfilled yet. You see the sleight of mind trick? There are prophecies in the Bible that haven't been fulfilled. They leave that comma, yet. This is what the fake news does, right? I hate to get political, but they're all the same people. They're all the same spirit. They're liberals. They're liberals, okay? Never trust a liberal Okay? Never trust a liberal, even if he says he was a former Christian, even if he says he used to be a pastor. They always have this, always the same story. I used to be a pastor for 20 years. But what happened? Um, what's always what's their excuse? If you used to be a pastor for 20 years, what didn't you learn in the first 10 years? I mean, that you learned in maybe the last year you were a Christian that changed your mind. What? Because I've been studying this book for years now, and there's nothing that's changing my mind. So obviously, or not obviously, but apparently someone lied to you. Hebrew has no vocabulary of slavery, only of servanthood. Okay. So when it comes to slavery in the Bible, it doesn't exist. But again, you know that debate is not going to happen. After the fall of Jay Pasick and Dr. Josh, they sort of retreated on debating the slavery stuff. That's why you haven't seen much slavery stuff on my channel. But there's the TikTok crowd. They're out there. I can go, snatch one of them up. But, that's low-hanging fruit, The TikTok crowd is low-hanging fruit. This is where, deconstruction zone, and they make their home, those types of Joel reads the Bible, black atheist rants. They make their nest, over there in the 14 to 24-year-old crowd. The TikTokers. Pseudo says you just debunked the article because it's Jewish prophecy. What? Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referring to there, Pseudo. Pseudo, you're gonna have to click on a link and man up and come in and explain yourself, because what you just said there, I'm not understanding, not making sense to me. I'll see you guys again on Sunday, not this Sunday coming up, but next Sunday. Deconstruction Zone. I have a few clips that I found just terrible. Just manipulation and sleight of mind tricks. Not so much the atheist tonight. The atheist tonight was sort of just clinging to one interpretation, a literal interpretation, and has to be that because that's the only way I can make the Bible contradict. And anything else that Christians come up with is just a way to avoid the contradiction. Well, I could argue the same. But you're picking the interpretation to make the prophecy false. Well, that's what it says. Oh, okay. That's what it says. Jesus is Lord and he's coming back. Repent or die.